Darcy Wu checked her phone for the 15th time in 3 minutes. The message from her lunch date still glowed on the screen. Running 20 minutes late. Got stuck in traffic between sectors. Don't let them start without me. She squinted at the room number again. Conference room 63B. This had to be it. The door hissed open with that particular mechanical sigh that every space station seemed to favor, and Darcy stepped inside expecting to find her friend Opal already seated with those little cucumber sandwiches from the good catering service. Instead, she found herself staring at the most elaborate conference setup she'd ever seen. The room stretched out like some kind of theatrical stage, with floating holographic displays casting ominous shadows across polished obsidian walls. Crystalline formations jutted from the ceiling at precise angles, each one pulsing with a different color that probably meant something important to someone who cared about interior design. At the far end of this architectural fever dream sat a creature that looked like someone had crossed a praying mantis with a disappointed middle manager. 7 feet tall, with chitinous plates that gleamed like oil spills, and compound eyes that held the particular kind of fury reserved for people who'd been kept waiting for bureaucratic reasons. This had to be the most overdressed lunch companion she'd ever encountered. "Finally," the creature said, its voice carrying the kind of authority that suggested it was used to being taken very seriously. "The representative of humanity arrives. I am Warlord Kethros of the Nexari Empire, commander of the Stellar Vanguard, destroyer of 12 worlds, and herald of your species' inevitable doom." Darcy blinked. She looked around the room again, taking in the dramatic lighting and what appeared to be actual skulls mounted on the walls. Either Opal had seriously upgraded her lunch game, or she'd walked into the wrong meeting entirely. "Right," she said slowly, still holding her phone. "I think there might be some confusion here. I'm just waiting for my friend. We're supposed to discuss weekend plans and maybe split an appetizer." Kethros tilted his massive head, compound eyes reflecting her image dozens of times over. "You dare mock me? I have spent 3 standard hours preparing this chamber for your arrival. The atmospheric processors have been calibrated to induce maximum psychological distress. The temperature has been precisely adjusted to cause discomfort without permanent damage. The lighting has been arranged to cast shadows that will remind you of your inevitable mortality." "That's nice," Darcy said, glancing at her watch. 23 minutes late now. If this kept up, they'd miss their reservation entirely. "Look, I don't want to be rude, but I'm kind of in a hurry. Could you maybe speed this up, whatever this is?" The Warlord's mandibles clicked together in what might have been surprise or irritation. "Speed this up? Human, do you not understand the gravity of your situation? You stand before the architect of your species' destruction. I command fleets that blot out stars. My armies have reduced entire civilizations to cosmic dust. When I speak, galaxies tremble." Darcy nodded politely while typing a quick text. "Stuck in weird meeting. Start without me if needed." She looked back up at Kethros, who seemed to be waiting for some kind of response. "That sounds very stressful for you. Have you considered delegation? I mean, running multiple galaxies seems like a lot for one person. Or creature. Thing." "I am not a thing." Kethros rose from his throne, which was apparently what the elaborate chair was supposed to be. "I am the scourge of 1,000 worlds, the nightmare that haunts your species' collective unconscious. Right, I got that part," Darcy interrupted, checking her phone again. Opal still hadn't replied. "But here's the thing. I've got a very narrow window here. My friend is already running late, and if we miss this lunch, she's going to be impossible to deal with for weeks. She gets really cranky when her blood sugar drops. So if you could just give me the highlights of whatever this is about, that would be great." Kethros stared at her for a long moment. The silence stretched out, filled only by the ominous humming of whatever technological marvels kept this chamber running. Finally, he spoke, his voice carrying a note of genuine bewilderment. Are you not afraid?" "Of missing lunch?" "Absolutely terrified." Darcy pulled out a small notepad from her purse, the kind with little flowers printed around the edges that her sister had given her last Christmas. "Okay, let's make this efficient. You're planning to destroy humanity, right? What's your timeline looking like? Are we talking next week, next month, next fiscal quarter? The compound eyes blinked in a wave pattern that probably indicated deep confusion in Nexari culture. Timeline? Yeah, you know, project management. When do you need this done by? What's your budget? Do you have stakeholder approval? These things don't just happen overnight. Darcy clicked her pen, ready to take notes. Also, is this a full extinction event, or are you planning to keep some humans around for labor purposes? Because the paperwork is completely different depending on which route you go. Kethros made a sound like grinding metal. Paperwork? Oh, definitely. Galactic regulations are very strict about genocidal campaigns. You'll need environmental impact assessments, refugee processing protocols, infrastructure maintenance agreements. Have you filed the proper forms with the Intergalactic Ethics Committee? Because let me tell you, those people do not mess around. They once shut down an entire war because someone forgot to submit Form 27B in triplicate. What? The Warlord's voice had lost some of its threatening edge. There are forms? So many forms. Darcy shook her head sympathetically. It's a real nightmare. And don't even get me started on the waiting periods. You're looking at minimum 6 months of processing time, assuming no complications. Did you check whether humanity has any protected status? Some species have historical preservation clauses that make them really annoying to exterminate legally. Kethros sank back into his throne, looking like someone who'd just discovered that his dramatic moment of triumph required a permit. I was not informed of any bureaucratic requirements. That's the thing about modern warfare. It's like 90% paperwork now. Darcy's phone buzzed. Another text from Opal. Traffic cleared. 5 minutes out. She looked back at Kethros with renewed urgency. Listen, I really do need to wrap this up soon. Can you just give me the executive summary? You want to destroy Earth, you've got some ships, you're very scary. What else do I need to know? The executive summary, Kethros repeated, his voice hollow. Yeah, like a brief overview. Hit me with your elevator pitch. The Warlord gestured weakly at the holographic displays surrounding them, which Darcy now noticed showed detailed battle plans, troop movements, and what appeared to be a very thorough analysis of human military capabilities. I have prepared comprehensive presentations, strategic overviews, detailed explanations of why resistance is futile. I'm sure it's all very thorough, Darcy said kindly, the way she talked to junior employees who'd spent weeks preparing presentations that could have been emails. But I'm more of a bullet points person. What's the bottom line here? Kethros stared at his elaborate displays, then at the skulls on the walls, then at the human sitting in his chamber of doom taking notes in a flower-covered notebook like she was planning a grocery run. Something seemed to break inside him. I have spent 17 years planning this moment, he said quietly. 17 years studying your species, learning your weaknesses, preparing for the day when I would finally face a human representative and witness the terror in their eyes as they realized the scope of their civilization's doom. 17 years? Darcy winced. Wow, that is a really long development cycle. No wonder you're frustrated. But honestly, that seems like a lot of overhead for what sounds like a pretty straightforward project. Have you considered bringing in a consultant? A consultant? Yeah, someone with experience in large-scale civilization management. I bet they could streamline your whole process, maybe cut that timeline down to something more reasonable. 17 years is a huge sunk cost. The Warlord's compound eyes focused on her with an intensity that probably would have been terrifying if she hadn't been more worried about whether the restaurant would hold their table. Human, do you truly not comprehend what I'm telling you? Your entire species will be wiped from existence. Your cities will burn. Your people will know suffering beyond imagination. Your children will curse your name for the weakness that led to this moment. Darcy nodded thoughtfully. Right, that's the outcome you're looking for. I get that. But what I'm asking about is the implementation strategy. Like, are you planning to hit all the major population centers simultaneously, or are you going to do a rolling deployment? because coordinating that many moving parts across multiple star systems is going to be a logistical nightmare. Logistical nightmare? Oh yeah, the scheduling alone will kill you. Time zones, communication delays, supply chain management. Plus, you've got to factor in human response times, evacuation protocols, infrastructure damage assessment. Are you planning to occupy the territories afterward, or is this more of a scorched earth situation? Kethros opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. He looked at his carefully prepared displays, his throne, his chamber of intimidation, and then at the small human who had somehow turned his moment of supreme triumph into what felt suspiciously like a very boring business meeting. "I had not considered," he said slowly, "the logistical complexities. Most people don't until it's too late." Darcy's phone buzzed again. "Oh, good. She's in the parking structure. Listen, I really do have to run, but this has been super interesting. Maybe we can schedule a follow-up meeting. I can put you in touch with our strategic planning department. They love this kind of challenge." She stood up, gathering her purse and notepad, leaving Kethros staring after her in complete bewilderment. The chamber's atmospheric processors continued their ominous humming. The holographic displays still showed detailed plans for humanity's destruction. The skulls on the walls continued to glare down with empty sockets. But somehow, the whole elaborate setup now felt less like a temple of doom and more like a conference room where someone had gotten a little too excited with the decorating budget. "Strategic planning," Kethros called after her as she headed for the door. "Room 15C, down the hall and to the left. Ask for Felix. Tell him Darcy sent you." She paused at the threshold, struck by a sudden thought. "Oh, and you might want to bring coffee. Those meetings can run really long." The door hissed shut behind her, leaving the would-be destroyer of humanity alone with his carefully crafted chamber of terror and the growing realization that somewhere in the last 15 minutes, his elaborate plan for galactic conquest had been reduced to a scheduling problem that required better project management. Kethros stared at the closed door for exactly 37 seconds before his pride reasserted itself with a vengeance. No insignificant human was going to walk out of his carefully orchestrated intimidation session and treat him like some kind of middle management problem. He was a warlord, destroyer of worlds, the nightmare that haunted the dreams of entire species. If terror wouldn't work, he'd simply have to escalate to actual demonstration of power. The control console rose from the floor at his mental command, its crystalline surface alive with pulsing alien script. He'd prepared this contingency specifically for stubborn humans who might need visual proof of their impending doom. The holographic projectors embedded in the chamber walls would display the burning remains of human colonies, the shattered hulks of their pathetic defense fleets, the screaming faces of their civilians as they begged for mercy that would never come. His clawed fingers danced across the interface, inputting the command sequence he'd memorized months ago. The chamber's lighting dimmed to an appropriately ominous level. The atmospheric processors shifted to their secondary protocol, filling the air with the metallic scent of ozone and death. This would show that bureaucratic little creature exactly what she was dealing with. Kethros pressed the final activation key with theatrical flourish. Instead of terrifying visions of human destruction, every light in the chamber flashed bright emergency red. A klaxon began wailing with the particular urgency reserved for catastrophic system failures. The crystalline formations in the ceiling started strobing in patterns that triggered migraine responses in most known species. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, he could see similar warning lights flashing throughout the entire station. The voice that emerged from the chamber's communication system was crisp, professional, and utterly devoid of the dramatic weight the moment required. "Attention all personnel. Emergency evacuation protocol has been activated. Please proceed to your designated evacuation stations in an orderly fashion. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Kethros stared at the control panel in growing horror. The holographic display showing his planned demonstration flickered weakly, displaying instead a cheerful cartoon character pointing toward the nearest emergency exits. Below the cartoon, helpful text scrolled past. "Remember, In case of emergency, stay calm and follow the yellow guidance strips to your assigned departure lounge. Through the chamber's massive doors, he could hear the thunder of running feet as every diplomat, administrator, and maintenance worker on the station fled toward the evacuation bays. Voices echoed in the corridors, some shouting orders, others demanding explanations, most simply screaming in whatever language they used for expressing panic. The control panel beeped helpfully. A new message appeared. Emergency evacuation initiated by user Kethros N47. Estimated time to station abandonment, 14 minutes, 37 seconds. Have a safe day. Kethros pressed every button he could reach. The system responded with increasingly cheerful acknowledgements of his attempts to cancel the evacuation, but absolutely no change in the blaring alarms or flashing lights. The countdown timer had appeared in the corner of every display, ticking down with mathematical precision toward total station abandonment. "Override evacuation protocol," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority that had cowed entire star systems. "Voice command not recognized," the system replied with mechanical politeness. "Please present proper authorization credentials or contact your system administrator for assistance. I am Kethros, Warlord of the Nexari Empire. I command fleets that..." Voice pattern matches user Kethros N47. However, evacuation override requires level 9 administrative clearance. Your current clearance level is guest. Would you like to submit a help desk ticket? Through the chaos of fleeing personnel, Kethros heard a familiar sound that made his compound eyes twitch with frustrated recognition. Someone was knocking on his chamber door. Not the urgent pounding of someone fleeing for their life, but the polite, rhythmic tapping of someone who'd been properly raised and didn't want to be rude. The door slid open to reveal the small human standing in the corridor, seemingly oblivious to the screaming aliens running past her in every direction. She had her phone pressed to one ear and was nodding along to whatever conversation she was having. No, I get it," she was saying into the device. "Traffic's crazy right now. There's some kind of emergency thing happening at the station. Lots of people leaving all at once." She looked up at Kethros with mild curiosity. "Hey, do you know what's going on out here? Everyone seems really upset about something." "The evacuation," Kethros managed, his voice strained with the effort of not screaming. "I accidentally activated the emergency evacuation protocol." "Oh, that's unfortunate." Darcy covered the phone's microphone with her hand. "Can't you just turn it off? It requires level 9 administrative clearance. I only have guest access." "Guest access? That seems like poor planning for someone who's trying to destroy civilizations." "Hold on." She returned to her phone call. "Opal? Yeah, I'm still here. Looks like lunch might be delayed a bit longer. There's this whole emergency thing, and now I'm helping someone with their computer problems." A group of Rigelian diplomats thundered past, their 6 legs carrying them toward the evacuation bays at impressive speed. One of them paused long enough to shout something that probably translated to, "Are you insane? Get to the ships!" before continuing their flight. Darcy watched them go with interest. "You know, I've never seen a real evacuation before. It's less organized than I expected. Don't they usually have drills for this kind of thing?" "Most civilized species practice evacuation procedures regularly," Kethros said, struggling to maintain some dignity while alarms continued to wail around them. "It's considered basic emergency preparedness." "Huh, that's smart." She gestured toward the retreating crowd. "So these are all the other aliens you're planning to conquer after you finish with humanity?" "Some of them, yes. The Galactic Council represents 47 different species across 12 sectors of..." Kethros stopped mid-sentence as the implications of what he'd just said hit him. "Wait, they're all evacuating because they think the station is about to explode." "Is it?" "No. The evacuation was supposed to be a demonstration, to show you the kind of panic and chaos that would accompany humanity's destruction." Darcy nodded thoughtfully. "So this is like a preview of coming attractions." "It was meant to be a psychological warfare tactic." Kethros's voice rose to match the volume of the klaxons. "A way to show you the futility of resistance." "Right, but now all the people you want to intimidate are running away. That seems counterproductive." She gestured toward the empty corridor. "Also, aren't some of these guys supposed to be on your side? Like potential allies or whatever?" Kethros looked around at his evacuating audience and felt something inside his thorax that he suspected might be what humans called regret. The Zentorian delegation had been considering joining his coalition. The Vorthan Trade Consortium had been on the fence about providing logistical support. The representatives from the Outer Rim colonies had seemed genuinely interested in his proposal for restructuring galactic power dynamics. All of them were now fleeing the station under the impression that spending time near him led to immediate life-threatening emergencies. "This is not how this was supposed to go," he said quietly. "I bet." Darcy patted his armored shoulder in a gesture that was probably meant to be comforting but mostly just highlighted how much larger he was than her. "Look, I'm sure we can figure this out. Let me just finish this call and then maybe we can work on the computer problem." She returned to her phone conversation, leaving Kethros to contemplate the ruins of his carefully planned psychological assault. Through the viewport, he could see evacuation shuttles launching from the docking bays, carrying away everyone he'd hoped to impress with his ruthless efficiency. "Opal? Yeah, still here. Listen, I might be a while longer. I'm helping this guy with some kind of work emergency. No, it's fine. He seems nice enough, just having a really bad day at the office." She glanced at Kethros. "Actually, can I call you back? I think I need to help him find an administrator or something." She ended the call and tucked the phone into her purse with the casual efficiency of someone who'd spent years managing other people's crises. "Okay, so you need level 9 clearance to shut this thing off, right? Who would have that kind of access?" "The station commander, the chief of security, the head of emergency services." Kethros's voice carried the hollow tone of someone who'd just realized that all three of those people were currently evacuating, along with everyone else. "Right. And they're all on the shuttles by now." Darcy looked around the empty corridor, then back at the flashing lights and screaming alarms. "Well, this is a problem." The evacuation countdown had reached 11 minutes, 23 seconds. In the distance, they could hear the rumble of more shuttles launching, carrying away what remained of Kethros's potential audience for intimidation. "You know," Darcy said thoughtfully, "this might actually be worse than missing lunch." Kethros stared at her. In all his years of conquest and intimidation, he'd never encountered a human who would rank a disrupted meal schedule as comparable to galactic-scale emergency evacuation. The comparison should have been insulting. Instead, it was somehow the most relatable thing anyone had said to him all day. "Much worse," he agreed. Somewhere in the bowels of the station, another shuttle departed with a rumble that shook the deck plates. The countdown timer continued its relentless march toward zero, and in the middle of it all, one very practical human and one increasingly desperate warlord stood surrounded by the chaos of his own making, trying to figure out how to explain to a computer that the emergency wasn't actually an emergency. "So," Darcy said, pulling out her flower-covered notepad again, "what exactly did you press to make this happen?" Darcy studied the control panel with the same expression she usually reserved for malfunctioning coffee machines. The alien script meant nothing to her, but bad user interface design was apparently universal. Too many buttons, not enough labels, and whoever had programmed this thing clearly believed that more flashing lights equaled better functionality. "Okay, walk me through exactly what you did," she said, pen poised over her notepad. "Step by step." Kethros gestured helplessly at the crystalline surface. "I activated the Psychological Warfare Protocol, subsection 7, variant C. It should have displayed holographic representations of human suffering to demonstrate the futility of resistance. And instead it triggered a station evacuation. Yes, that seems like a design flaw." The evacuation countdown had reached 8 minutes, 41 seconds. Through the viewport, Darcy could see the last few shuttles departing, their engines leaving bright trails against the starfield. The station was rapidly emptying of everyone except them, and whoever was responsible for keeping the life support systems running. Her phone rang with the specific ringtone she'd assigned to Opal, a snippet of that old Earth song about getting by with help from friends. She answered without looking away from the control panel. "Hey, what's up?" she said, tucking the device between her shoulder and ear so she could keep taking notes. "Darcy, where are you?" Opal's voice carried the particular edge that meant she was standing in an empty restaurant feeling abandoned. I've been waiting at Fusion 47 for 20 minutes. They gave away our table. I'm so sorry. I got stuck helping someone with a work emergency. It's this whole thing with computer systems and evacuation protocols. Super boring technical stuff. Kethros watched this conversation with growing fascination. The human was treating his galactic crisis like an everyday inconvenience while simultaneously managing her personal social obligations. The casual efficiency of it was somehow more unsettling than any military strategy he'd ever encountered. "Can't someone else handle it?" Opal asked. "We made these reservations 3 weeks ago." I know, but honestly, everyone else kind of panicked and left. It's just me and this guy now, and he really needs help figuring out how to fix what he broke." Darcy glanced at Kethros apologetically. "Hold on. Let me ask him how long this might take." She covered the microphone and looked at the Warlord expectantly. "So, what's your timeline for getting this sorted out? Are we talking 5 minutes, or should I tell my friend to find somewhere else to eat?" "I have no idea how to resolve this situation," Kethros admitted, his voice hollow with defeat. "The evacuation protocol has never been accidentally triggered before. The safety systems were designed to prevent exactly this kind of mistake." "Right, but there's got to be some kind of manual override, right? Emergency systems always have backdoors for situations like this." Darcy returned to her phone. "Opal? Yeah, this might take a while. He doesn't really know what he's doing." "Great, just great." Opal's frustration was clearly audible even to Kethros, whose hearing was adapted for detecting the ultrasonic screams of his enemies. "Do you know how hard it is to get a table at Fusion 47? They're booked solid for the next 6 months. I'll make it up to you, I promise. Maybe we can try that new place in Sector 12, the one with the molecular gastronomy? The one where they serve everything as transparent cubes? Darcy, that's not food, that's an art installation." Kethros found himself oddly invested in this conversation. Food was a universal concern, something that transcended species barriers. Even apex predators had to eat. "What type of cuisine does Fusion 47 specialize in?" he asked, genuinely curious. Darcy blinked at him. "Oh, it's this amazing blend of Earth-Asian flavors with Centaurian spice techniques. They do this thing with crystallized proteins that's supposed to be incredible." "Centaurian spice techniques," Kethros repeated slowly. "The Centaurians were one of the species I conquered last year. Their culinary traditions are quite sophisticated." "You conquered them? That's horrible." Darcy's expression didn't change much, but her tone carried the same mild disapproval she might use for someone who'd cut in line at the grocery store. "Are they okay?" "They have been relocated to designated agricultural zones, where they can continue their traditional food preparation practices under Nexari supervision." "So they're still cooking?" "Yes, their skills were deemed too valuable to waste." Darcy nodded thoughtfully. "That's something, I guess. Opal, did you hear that? This guy conquered the Centaurians, but he kept their chefs around." She paused, listening to her friend's response. "She says that's the most practical approach to interstellar conquest she's ever heard of. Most species just blow everything up and then complain about the food being terrible." Kethros felt an unexpected warm sensation in his thorax region. The Centaurians expressed gratitude for the preservation of their cultural heritage. "See, that's smart long-term thinking. No point in destroying something useful." Darcy covered the phone again. "Opal wants to know if the Centaurian chefs would be available for catering. She's planning her sister's wedding, and finding good caterers is apparently impossible these days." The question caught Kethros completely off guard. "Catering?" "Yeah, for events, parties, weddings, corporate functions. If you've got access to Centaurian chefs, that could be a really good side business. Diversify your revenue streams." The evacuation countdown had reached 6 minutes, 12 seconds. The station's corridors were now completely empty except for the maintenance drones that continued their programmed routines, oblivious to the crisis around them. And here he was, discussing wedding catering with a human who'd somehow made his terrifying chamber of doom feel like a casual business networking event. "I had not considered the commercial applications of conquest," he said slowly. "Most people don't think about the ancillary revenue opportunities. You're probably sitting on a gold mine and don't even realize it." Darcy made another note in her flower-covered notebook. Opal, I'm going to have to call you back. We're making progress here, but this might take a while longer. She ended the call and focused her full attention on Kethros for the first time since entering his chamber. The difference was immediately noticeable. Where before she'd been distracted and hurried, now she had the focused efficiency of someone who'd decided to actually solve a problem. All right, let's think about this logically. You accidentally triggered an evacuation protocol. The system won't let you cancel it because you don't have the right clearance level. But somebody designed this system, which means somebody knows how it works. She tapped her pen against her lips. Who built this station? The Galactic Council commissioned it from Varothian Engineering Solutions approximately 43 years ago. Varothian, are they still around? They were absorbed into the Nexari Empire 8 months ago. Darcy stared at him. You conquered the people who built this station? Their technological expertise was deemed valuable for the Empire's expansion efforts. So the guys who know how to fix this computer system now work for you? In the Technical Services Division? Yes. And where are they right now? Kethros opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again as the implication hit him. They are evacuating the station because they believe it's about to explode. Because you set off the emergency system? Yes. The emergency system they designed? Yes. So the only people who can fix this are currently running away from the thing they built because they think it's broken. Kethros made that grinding metal sound again, but this time it carried more resignation than frustration. That is an accurate summary of the situation. The countdown timer now showed 4 minutes, 58 seconds. Through the chamber's communication system, they could hear the increasingly frantic announcements from the evacuation coordinators. All personnel to departure bays immediately. Station system showing critical failures in multiple sectors. Repeat, this is not a drill. Okay, new plan? Darcy said, settling into one of the smaller chairs that surrounded Kethros's throne. We're going to have to ride this out. How long does the evacuation protocol last? Once initiated, the system maintains emergency status until either an authorized override is entered or the station's automated systems complete their diagnostic cycle. How long is the diagnostic cycle? Approximately 6 hours. Darcy winced. 6 hours of alarm sounds. That's going to get really annoying really fast. She looked around the chamber, taking in the elaborate setup with fresh eyes. You know, this is actually a pretty nice space. Good acoustics, dramatic lighting. You could probably rent this out for events when you're not using it for intimidation purposes. Rent it out? Sure. Corporate retreats, team-building exercises, maybe some of those murder mystery dinner things. The skull decorations would be perfect for Halloween parties. She gestured toward the holographic displays. And this projection system is seriously impressive. You could do presentations, maybe some immersive theater. Kethros found himself looking around his chamber of terror with entirely new eyes. The intimidating ambience he'd spent months perfecting suddenly seemed less like a tool of psychological warfare and more like an underutilized venue space. I had not considered alternative applications for the infrastructure. Darcy's idea turned out to be remarkably simple and completely insane in equal measure. While the evacuation countdown ticked towards 0, she pulled up the station directory on her phone and started calling random departments that might still have someone manning the phones. Not the important departments that would have evacuated first, but the ones that always got forgotten during emergencies. Hi, is this maintenance scheduling? Great. I need to speak with someone about emergency override protocols. She gestured for Kethros to wait while she navigated what sounded like an automated phone tree. No, this isn't about a clogged drain. Yes, I'll hold. The hold music that emerged from her phone speaker was a tinny instrumental version of something that might have been classical Rigelian opera, if classical Rigelian opera was performed entirely by robots having an argument. Kethros found it more disturbing than most of his psychological warfare techniques. Here's the thing, Darcy said while they waited. Every system has workarounds. Nobody designs something this complex without building in ways to fix it when it breaks. The trick is finding someone who actually knows where the off switch is hidden. The countdown showed 1 minute, 18 seconds. Red warning lights bathed everything in an apocalyptic glow that would have been perfect for Kethros's intimidation purposes if anyone had been around to witness it. Instead, it just made Darcy's phone screen harder to read. "Hello? Yes, I'm calling about the emergency evacuation that's currently happening." Her voice shifted to the particular tone people used when dealing with customer service representatives. Polite but firm, with an underlying suggestion that someone was about to have a very bad performance review. "I need to speak with someone who has Level 9 administrative access." Kethros could hear the tinny voice on the other end of the line, but couldn't make out the words. Whatever they were saying made Darcy's expression shift from professional patience to genuine surprise. "Oh, you're still here. Everyone else evacuated, but you stayed to monitor the systems." She looked at Kethros with something approaching admiration. "That's incredibly dedicated, or incredibly stupid. I'm not sure which." The voice on the phone continued speaking, and Darcy started nodding. "Right, I see. So you can override the evacuation from your location, but you need authorization from someone in the room where it was triggered." She paused. "Well, I'm in that room right now, and I'm with the person who accidentally set this whole thing off." More tinny conversation. The countdown reached 37 seconds. "His name is Kethros. He's some kind of alien warlord situation. Very official. Lots of dramatic posturing. Probably has credentials somewhere." Darcy held the phone toward the bewildered alien. "They need you to verify your identity." Kethros stared at the small rectangular device like it might explode. "I don't understand." "Just talk into it. Say who you are and that you want to cancel the evacuation." "I am Warlord Kethros of the Nexari Empire, commander of the Stellar Vanguard, destroyer of 12 worlds," he began, his voice automatically shifting into what Darcy was starting to recognize as his official intimidation mode. "Maybe tone it down a bit," she suggested. "This is customer service, not a war council." Kethros cleared his throat and tried again. "This is Kethros. I am experiencing technical difficulties with the emergency systems. I would like to cancel the current evacuation protocol." Darcy took the phone back. "Did that work? Great. No, he's not actually destroying anything right now. It was just a misunderstanding with the user interface." The countdown timer suddenly stopped at 11 seconds, and the klaxons cut off with blessed silence. "Perfect. Thank you so much. You probably just saved everyone a lot of paperwork." She ended the call and tucked her phone away, leaving Kethros staring at her in complete bewilderment. The emergency lights continued flashing, but the countdown had disappeared, replaced by a cheerful message. "Evacuation protocol cancelled. Normal operations resuming. Please excuse any inconvenience." "That's it?" he asked. "That's it. Turns out there was one guy in environmental systems who didn't evacuate because someone needed to keep the air recyclers running. He had override access for safety reasons." Darcy stretched, looking pleased with herself. Crisis solved. Pretty anticlimactic, honestly. The chamber felt strangely quiet without the constant wailing of alarms. Kethros looked around at his elaborate setup, his throne, his carefully arranged intimidation props, and felt something that might have been embarrassment if warlords were capable of such emotions. "I spent months preparing for this confrontation," he said quietly. "I can tell. This is all very impressive." Darcy gestured at the holographic displays, which were now showing helpful reminders about proper evacuation procedures. "Really committed to the aesthetic. But maybe next time you want to intimidate someone, you should make sure you know how all the buttons work first." Her phone rang again. This time it was a different ringtone, something official and slightly ominous that suggested work was calling during what was supposed to be personal time. "Darcy Wu speaking." She listened for a moment, then sighed. "No, I'm still at the station. There was an incident with some emergency systems, but it's resolved now." Another pause. "What do you mean? Reports of a diplomatic crisis. Who reported a diplomatic crisis?" Kethros felt his compound eyes focusing involuntarily. "Diplomatic crisis?" Darcy held up one finger, indicating he should wait. "Felix, slow down. What exactly did the Galactic Council tell you?" Her expression shifted from mild annoyance to genuine concern. They said, "What about humanity's representative?" The voice on the other end was getting louder and more agitated. Kethros could make out words like unprecedented breach of protocol and immediate recall of diplomatic credentials. Okay, I understand. But here's the thing. Darcy looked directly at Kethros while she spoke. The situation isn't what it seems. Yes, I'm currently in a room with someone who claims to want to destroy humanity. No, it's not actually a crisis. It's more like a really awkward misunderstanding that got out of hand. She paused, listening, then continued. Felix, trust me on this. I've been dealing with this for the last hour, and honestly, it's not a military threat. It's more like a customer service issue with really dramatic presentation. Kethros felt something inside his thorax that he couldn't quite identify. Was she defending him? To her own species' diplomatic corps? No, I don't need extraction. What I need is for you to not do anything stupid while I finish sorting this out. Her voice carried the particular authority of someone who'd spent years managing crises that other people had created. Give me another hour before you start filing incident reports. She ended the call and looked at Kethros with something that might have been sympathy. So apparently your little intimidation session has been interpreted as a formal diplomatic incident. My government is probably going to want a full report, complete with threat assessments and recommended response protocols. Your government? Yeah, the people who pay me to handle exactly these kinds of situations. They're probably not going to be thrilled about the whole destroy humanity thing. Darcy pulled out her notepad again. Which brings us back to my original question about your timeline. When exactly were you planning to start this conquest? Kethros stared at her. You want to schedule my invasion of your homeworld? I want to understand what we're working with here. Look, you seem like a reasonable person. Alien. Whatever. You kept the Centaurian chefs around instead of just blowing everything up. You're clearly not some mindless destroyer type. So what's the real story here? The question hung in the air between them. Around them, the chamber's emergency systems continued their diagnostic cycles, occasionally beeping with updates that nobody was paying attention to. The holographic displays had shifted to showing helpful safety tips and contact information for counseling services. The real story, Kethros said slowly, is that I have spent the last decade building a reputation as the most feared warlord in 3 sectors of space. My name strikes terror into the hearts of civilizations. My mere presence causes planets to surrender rather than face annihilation. Right. And then I encounter one human who treats galactic conquest like a scheduling conflict, and suddenly nothing makes sense anymore. Darcy considered this. You know, that's actually kind of a compliment. It means we're unpredictable. That's got to be worth something in your line of work. Unpredictable is one word for it. Kethros slumped in his throne, looking less like a terrifying destroyer of worlds and more like someone who'd just realized their life's work might need some serious revision. I have conquered species that fought to their last breath. I have faced warriors who preferred death to surrender. I have negotiated with diplomats who treated our meetings like elaborate chess matches where civilizations hung in the balance. Sounds exhausting. It was predictable. Everyone understood their role: fear, defiance, desperate negotiation, eventual submission. There was a pattern to it, a logic. He gestured helplessly at Darcy. But you treat the destruction of your entire species like a minor inconvenience that's interfering with your lunch plans. Well, to be fair, I really was looking forward to those cucumber sandwiches. Kethros made the grinding sound again, but this time it sounded suspiciously like laughter. Your species is insane. That's what everyone says. Darcy checked her phone. Opal found a different restaurant. Apparently they have outdoor seating and live music. She says it's actually better than Fusion 47. She looked up at Kethros. Want to join us? I mean, after we figure out what you're going to do about this whole galactic conquest thing. You're inviting me to lunch? Why not? You seem like you could use a break from all the destroying and conquering. Plus, I'm curious about these Centaurian spice techniques. Maybe we could work out some kind of cultural exchange program instead of the whole annihilation approach. The chamber's communication system crackled to life with a new announcement. Evacuation protocol has been cancelled. All personnel may return to normal duties. We apologize for any inconvenience caused by this false alarm. Through the viewport, Darcy could see the first shuttles beginning their return journey to the station. In about 20 minutes, the corridors would be full of confused and irritated aliens who'd just experienced an unnecessary evacuation because someone couldn't figure out how to work a computer properly. "So," she said, standing up and gathering her things, "what's it going to be? Continued plans for species extinction? Or would you rather discuss this over some really excellent fusion cuisine?" Kethros looked at his throne, his intimidation chamber, his carefully prepared displays of terrifying military might. Then he looked at the small human who had somehow turned his moment of supreme triumph into an impromptu business consultation and lunch invitation. "I believe," he said slowly, "that I may need to reconsider my strategic approach. Probably a good idea. From what I've seen, your current plan has some serious implementation challenges." Darcy headed for the door, then paused. "Oh, and you might want to get some training on those computer systems. Maybe ask those Varothian engineers to put together a user manual or something. This kind of mistake could really hurt your reputation." As the door hissed shut behind her, Kethros sat alone in his chamber of terror, surrounded by the tools of psychological warfare that had somehow been rendered completely ineffective by one human's absolute refusal to be impressed by anything. Outside, he could hear the sounds of returning personnel, confused conversations about the false alarm, and someone complaining loudly about missing an important meeting because of some idiot who doesn't know how to use basic emergency systems. Kethros looked at his empty throne room and realized that somewhere in the last hour, his carefully planned campaign of galactic domination had been reduced to a customer service issue that required better user training. The most terrifying part was that he was actually considering her lunch invitation.